My name is Sadie Miller. I'm 36 years old, living in Austin, Texas, and I own a small HVAC repair shop on the edge of the city. That evening, I brought a homemade apple pie, thinking that even if I wasn't appreciated, I should still show up for the family's Thanksgiving dinner. But the moment I stepped onto the porch, my mother blocked the door, glanced at my work clothes, and said coldly, "You shouldn't come in. They're all inside. You don't fit." I stood there, hands stiff around the still warm pie dish, looking through the window at my entire family raising glasses, laughing with strangers, as if I had never existed. Have you ever been cast aside by your own family just because your job wasn't elegant enough? Leave a comment if you've ever been looked down on because of your background or profession. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because what happened after that night was beyond anything you could imagine. I remember clearly that early morning when I was 19, standing in the cold hospital room as the doctor gently placed a hand on my mom's shoulder and said he went peacefully. Lung cancer had taken my father in just 8 short months. He was the one who taught me how to change oil, how to listen to an engine and know exactly what needed checking. His hands were always stained with grease, but his eyes beamed with pride every time I finished a job without asking for help. After the funeral, my mother completely fell apart. She didn't wail or scream. She just sat quietly in Dad's old chair, staring blankly out at the backyard. I was the one handling the paperwork, meeting with the bank, and paying tuition for Haley, my little sister, who was 15 at the time. We had no savings. The life insurance barely covered the mortgage. I used to dream of going to college for automotive engineering and had even been accepted into a local community college with a partial scholarship, but when I looked at the utility bills, Mom's medications, and the pile of letters from Haley's high school, I knew what I had to do. I folded the acceptance letter, tucked it in a drawer, and the next morning I was up by 6 a.m. looking for work. I did everything: tire changes, exhaust cleaning, HVAC installation for new construction sites, day shifts, night shifts, whenever someone needed help. Some months I didn't even turn on the heater in my tiny rental, just so I could send Haley's first tuition payment on time. Back then, my mother relied on widow's assistance. She didn't do much, just listened to the radio and occasionally made dinner. But what bothered me most was the way she treated Haley like a precious gem and me like background noise. "She's the baby," Mom would always say whenever I complained that Haley never lifted a finger to help around the house. When Haley went off to college, I was the one who drove her across state lines to campus. I'll never forget helping her unpack in the dorm, fixing the stuck closet door hinge, then turning around to see her posing for pictures with her friends, her back to me. No introductions, no wave. I told myself, it's fine, she's young, she's nervous. Don't read too much into it. I went back to Austin and kept working. Every penny I saved went straight into her tuition each semester. I even sold my dad's old pickup, the last thing I had left that reminded me of him, just to buy Haley the MacBook she had her heart set on. The same girl who used to run into my arms crying over a 6th grade math test now dodged my calls. During holidays, she'd come home but head out right after dinner. One year, I booked a table at an Italian restaurant Dad and I used to love, planning a family dinner to celebrate Haley's honors scholarship. But when I called to confirm, Mom said, "Oh, she's going out with her boyfriend tonight. She's busy." I heard she was dating someone named Ethan, a tech student, the son of a prominent investor. I never met him, even after 3 years. Whenever I asked, Haley would just smile vaguely and say, "He's super busy. You don't need to meet him." Bit by bit, I realized I didn't belong in the future Haley was building. She didn't lie about me, she simply erased me. When I asked if she'd received the new scholarship info I sent her, she brushed me off with, "I don't need it. I've got someone guiding me already." Then one day, while I was installing a new HVAC system at a boutique hotel downtown, I overheard one of the interns chatting. "Hey Sadie, do you know Haley Miller? She spoke at the university seminar last week. Said she got a full scholarship because her dad was a former professor who gave his life to the community." I froze. My dad was a repairman. He never set foot in a classroom as a teacher. I'm not the kind of person who holds grudges, but that line felt like a punch to the chest. Not because she lied, but because I finally realized, in her version of the story, I didn't exist. I'd stayed silent for too long. I thought if I gave enough, one day I'd be recognized, but to them, I was just the backdrop, the invisible sister working quietly in the shadows so they could shine in the spotlight. I never wanted gratitude. I only wanted to be seen as someone who mattered. The most painful part wasn't being forgotten, it was being hidden, like something to be ashamed of. That's when I started reevaluating everything I had sacrificed, and I quietly wondered, if I disappeared from their lives, would anyone even notice? Tuesday afternoon, just after I finished a cooling system job in a warehouse on the city's west side, my phone buzzed repeatedly. The name flashing on the screen made me pause. Rachel Jennings. She was a high school classmate, one of the few who used to say I was better than any guy in the shop class. We hadn't spoken in years, so I was surprised to see her message. Sadie, I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but since you're the one paying, I think you deserve to know. I stood next to my truck, holding my phone, forgetting to even open the tailgate. I texted back immediately, "What's going on, Rachel?" Her reply came fast, along with a screenshot. Payer listed Sadie Miller. Payer listed Sadie Miller. The email and account info match yours exactly. I read those lines over and over, barely believing what I was seeing. Rachel continued, Haley told the financial office her family wanted the tuition sponsor's identity kept confidential, but the system still records the official payer. Her boyfriend called yesterday asking about scholarships. You get what I'm saying? I didn't respond right away. My head spun, not because of the information itself, but because deep down, I already knew what was happening. Haley hadn't just hidden me, she was building an entirely new story. I had suspected it for a while, but seeing my name in official financial documents while she lived another life like I never existed, that vague unease inside me sharpened into something clear and painful. That evening, I sat alone in the small office behind my shop, the overhead fluorescent light flickering slightly. I opened my laptop and typed the name Ethan Langston, Haley's current boyfriend, whom I'd never met. His LinkedIn profile loaded in seconds, founder of a green tech investment fund. I scrolled down. His past investments weren't many, but one name stopped me cold. Verdant Current Microenergy for Rural Communities. A startup based in Denver focused on small-scale solar power systems for off-grid regions. I stared at the name, my throat tightening. I knew Verdant Current. Knew it well. 3 years ago, I had invested in them when they were just a small group of engineers fresh out of their first pitch round. A friend from my HVAC days had introduced us. I liked the idea, saw the potential. No one in my family ever knew, and I'd never brought it up. I wasn't one to boast. I just wanted to back something meaningful. I quietly closed the laptop, staring into nothing. Haley was dating a man who thought she came from a family of doctors and engineers. Meanwhile, the very HVAC tech who was uninvited to family dinner was the one who had helped fund the startup he was now considering for a multi-million-dollar investment. I leaned back in my chair, fingers wrapped around a cold mug of coffee. The next morning, I walked into a routine meeting with Verdant Current's founding team. I wasn't on the executive board, but I still held a technical advisory stake. That day, a special guest joined the meeting, Ethan Langston. I shook his hand in silence. When his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of confusion. Maybe he didn't expect the woman in a grease-stained jacket to be one of the original believers in the very company he was now planning to invest in. You're Sadie Miller? He asked, softly, but searchingly. I nodded. Yes, I was an early stakeholder here. I still help them out with technical support now and then. Ethan took a small step back, still holding the folder in his hand. I could see him connecting dots in his mind. We didn't say another word throughout the meeting. But when I stood up to leave the room, he called after me, barely above a whisper. Sadie. I turned. Do you have a sister named Haley? I didn't answer right away. I just looked him straight in the eyes, long enough for the silence to speak for itself. Then I walked out, leaving behind an open door and a truth that had just cracked open. I didn't have to expose anything. Haley was building a tower of mirrors, and the first cracks had appeared. I woke up earlier than usual that day, not because of a last-minute repair request or the usual whirring sound from the old AC unit. I just couldn't sleep. All night, my mind was like a tightly wound cable, looping broken images again and again. Haley's face in the graduation gown I wasn't invited to see, the family dinner she laughed through without me, and the bold lies she proudly told about her background. I made coffee and sat at the small wooden kitchen table by the window. The morning sun wasn't strong enough to warm the room, but I didn't feel cold. I opened my laptop, hands moving out of habit. I logged into the tuition payment portal for the law school Haley attended. A notice popped up. Spring term, balance due, $21,500. Payment deadline, 14 days. I stared at the number without blinking. That was the amount I used to work double shifts on holidays to cover. The amount that made me cancel a Colorado vacation so I wouldn't miss the deadline. The amount I paid for someone who never acknowledged I was her sister. I moved my cursor to the payment method section. A dialog box appeared. Are you sure you want to delete this method? This action cannot be undone. I hovered for a few seconds, then clicked confirm. No hesitation, no second thoughts. As the window closed, I opened my father's trust account, the one I'd been assigned to manage since his passing. In over 10 years, I had never touched that money. I saw it as a final memory of my father, meant to be preserved unless the family truly needed it. But that day, I'd toggled the account status to full protective mode. That meant no one could withdraw or alter anything without my direct approval. Barely 2 minutes after closing the laptop, my phone rang. It was Haley. I looked at the screen, didn't want to pick up, but I did. Her voice burst through, breathless, like she'd run across the whole city. What did you do? I said nothing. The school just emailed me. My tuition hasn't been paid. You took your info off the payment system, didn't you? I sipped my coffee, keeping my voice even. Yes. Her voice cracked like a glass under pressure. You can't do this. I have 2 years left. I'm in the middle of a semester. And you're also in the middle of a web of lies about your past, I replied. Did you think I didn't know you told people our parents were doctors? That you claimed to have a full scholarship because of a special hardship? I just didn't want to be judged, Haley cried. You don't get it. At my school, people look down on anyone from a working class background. So that's why I wasn't welcome at the family table on Thanksgiving, I said. A bitter knot rose in my throat. Because I work with my hands. Because I don't know which fork is for salad. That's not what I meant, she sobbed. I just wanted everything to go smoothly. Please don't do this. Please don't abandon me. I'm not abandoning you, I said, voice cold as steel. I'm taking back something you were never entitled to in the first place. I hung up. No chance for her to plead again. But before I could take a breath, the phone rang again. This time, it was Mom. Sadie, she said, her voice trembling. What have you done? Haley's been calling me in a panic. Are you really going to let her drop out? I walked to the window. The sky outside was clear, but inside me was a dense, gray fog. If you care that much, I said calmly, then you pay her tuition. You know I can't afford that, she snapped. Your father left money. And he left me in charge of it, I interrupted. Because he trusted I'd know when it should be used. And right now is not that time. You can't be this cruel, my mother cried. She's your sister. The same sister who didn't invite me to her graduation, who never introduces me as her sibling, who erased me from her life just to protect her image with her boyfriend's family. There was a pause. Then her tone shifted, from pleading to accusing. You're destroying this family's future. I almost laughed. No, I said. I'm just done doing everything while being kept out of the picture. If someone isn't allowed a seat at the table, they shouldn't be expected to do the grocery shopping, cook the meal, and wash the dishes for everyone else. I ended the call. No shaking, no tears, just a strange calm settling into my bones. I was no longer the one in the background, keeping everything running. And if someone thought that was wrong, maybe they were just too used to living off someone else's sacrifice. 3 days after I cut off the tuition funds, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Message after message poured in from familiar names. Aunt Rebecca, Uncle Ben, Cousin Lacey, even Haley's old piano teacher. All with the same tone. Disappointment, guilt-tripping, and an unwavering belief that I had just committed an unforgivable act. Sadie, she's just a kid, my aunt texted. Be patient, she's almost done. Don't be so petty, Uncle Ben added. Money doesn't buy love. I didn't reply to any of them. I had no intention of explaining that Haley was 30, not some helpless child, or that I had been the one paying for her dream of becoming a lawyer all along. That morning, after hanging up on the 7th call from a distant relative I barely remembered, I opened Facebook, and then I understood why they were all reacting like this. Haley had just posted a photo a few hours earlier. She sat on a bed, eyes red and streaked with mascara, holding an open law textbook. The caption read like it belonged in a tragic novel. It's heartbreaking when your own blood chooses money over family. Losing tuition support just because I didn't invite my sister to dinner. Was it worth it? The post had already gathered hundreds of reactions. Comments flooded in. Stay strong, girl, you deserve the best. Can't believe family could be so cold. With a sister like that, who needs enemies? I quietly read each line. Every word felt like a small blade pressing slowly into my heart. No one wanted to hear both sides. No one asked what had really happened. All it took was a photo with tear-filled eyes and a few emotional sentences to turn me into the villain in the play my sister was staging. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. Just empty. That afternoon, while checking the air conditioning system in the basement of an old downtown store, I heard my phone buzz repeatedly in my coat pocket. I meant to ignore it, but the screen's glow through the fabric caught my attention. A message from Lacey, my cousin. Sadie, what are you doing? Aunt Margie says Haley might get suspended, and she's been crying all week. You embarrassed everyone. The whole family is talking about you. I stared at the message for a while, then slipped the phone back into my pocket. During break, I sat on the back steps of the garage, sipping coffee. The winter breeze brushed the back of my neck, cold, yet oddly gentle. I quietly opened Facebook again and scrolled down to Haley's post. I didn't comment, didn't react, but something inside me shifted. I used to believe that if I stayed silent and kind, eventually people would come to understand me. But no one wants to understand if they've grown used to a version of you painted by someone else. Haley wasn't just telling a different story. She was rewriting the truth entirely, casting me as the cold-blooded one and herself as the undeservedly abandoned victim. What stunned me most wasn't the post. It was the final comment at the bottom. From a name I knew far too well. Account Ethan Langston. He wrote simply, "Is this really true?" Nothing more, no emoji, no follow-up. But to me that was enough. Enough to know Ethan had begun to question. And enough for me to realize my sister wasn't just trying to save face with the family. She was making a move in a much larger game. One that involved the man she hoped would invest in her future. What Haley didn't know was that piece on her chessboard had long had a strong connection to me. And once someone starts asking questions, the truth never stays buried for long. That evening, I returned to the garage later than usual. Not because I had more work, but because I needed time to gather myself. The back office felt as familiar as the lines on my palm. I brewed a cup of hot ginger tea, placed it beside my laptop, and opened the folder labeled Haley Tuition. Every transfer receipt, every confirmation email from her university's finance department, every bank statement, I had saved them all. Not out of suspicion, but habit. All these years, I never thought anyone would need to see them. I never thought I'd have to use them to protect myself from my own family. I opened a new email addressed to the law school's student financial office. In the body, I wrote concisely, "Dear Tuition Office, I am Sadie Miller, the person who has covered all tuition fees, living expenses, and academic materials for student Hailey Miller from her first year to the present. Please find attached a detailed summary of all payments, including transaction dates, methods, and confirmation codes." I added nothing more. No emotion, just data and documents. I hit send. Then I open another email. This one to Ethan Langston. I hesitated for a moment, but after everything that had happened, I knew. My silence was no longer an act of kindness. It was helping sustain a false narrative. I typed the first lines. "Dear Ethan, I believe you may have some questions regarding Haley's actual circumstances. I do not intend to interfere in your personal matters, but since my name has been mentioned publicly with inaccurate information, I feel compelled to clarify. Haley is not on a full scholarship, nor is she from a family of doctors or engineers, as she may have claimed. All of her tuition from her first year to now has been paid by me, her sister. I've attached financial records and confirmations from the school for your review." I paused, then decided to add a final paragraph. "I'm not looking for gratitude, but I won't accept being defamed or erased from the picture I helped build with my own sweat and sacrifice. Whether you believe me is entirely your choice." I hit send. Before logging off, I forwarded a copy of the message to 3 more addresses: the investment board of Ethan's firm, the CEO of the Verdant Current project, and their head of finance. People who had worked with me from the beginning. The next morning, while tightening a cold air duct in a model apartment, my phone vibrated nonstop in my pocket. I wasn't planning to answer, but when I saw the name on the screen, I froze. "Ethan Langston," I answered, keeping my voice calm. "Speaking." His voice on the other end wasn't rushed, but it carried a weight I hadn't heard before. "Sadie, we've met before, haven't we?" I squinted toward the misty courtyard outside. "I believe so, at a Vergent meeting 3 years ago, before you had your own office." Ethan was quiet for a moment. I let the silence stretch. "You were our first investor," he said at last, barely above a whisper. "Back when we needed 50,000 to lock down our patent, no one else dared to take the risk. Only one person transferred funds within 12 hours of that Zoom call." I nodded, knowing he couldn't see it. "I believed in the idea." "I didn't know it was you," he murmured. "I really didn't." I said nothing. I felt no bitterness, no vindication, just a truth returned to its rightful place. Ethan asked quietly, "Did Haley ever mention you?" "No," I said. "Not at any party, not in any post, not in any story about her success." I heard him exhale, a deep, weary sigh. "I have a lot to reconsider." "That's your decision," I replied. "I didn't send those documents to sway you, just to give you the facts you need to choose wisely." Before hanging up, he paused again, then added, "Whatever happens, I'm sorry for what you had to go through." I ended the call and set the phone down, my hands still coated with metal dust. I didn't feel lighter nor heavier, I just felt grounded. After years of staying silent to keep the peace, I realized one thing I could no longer tolerate was the distortion of truth. And if I needed to speak up to stop it, then I would. Because sometimes the only way people stop stepping on you is when you finally stand up. Saturday evening, in a penthouse apartment nestled in Midtown, Ethan hosted a casual gathering with his investment advisory team and 2 new partners from Los Angeles. The party wasn't overly formal. White wine was poured with a light hand, a tray of cheeses arranged with precision. Soft jazz filled the space, just enough to smooth over silences without drowning conversation. Haley walked in with confident strides, her silk dress hugging her curves, heels gliding across polished wood floors like she'd belonged in rooms like this her entire life. Ethan sat at the corner of the bar, half-melted ice and a glass of whiskey. His face was calm, almost distant. As Haley approached, he set the glass down and gestured silently for her to follow him into the small office tucked behind a thick oak door that muffled the music. As soon as she closed the door, he asked without ceremony, "Why did you say your sister died in a car accident?" Haley froze. Her face flickered briefly, then tried to settle back into calm. "I just didn't think it mattered." Ethan stood upright. "Then why did you tell your parents were scientists? That you grew up in an academic family with a tradition of higher education?" "Either I just wanted to impress people. I was afraid if I told the truth, they'd think I wasn't good enough," Haley stammered. "She was a manual laborer. I just wanted to keep those worlds separate." "She was the first person to invest in Verdant," Ethan said, his voice dropping lower. "If it weren't for her money, I would have lost my first patent. Your sister saved the entire project, and you erased her from your story." Haley swallowed hard, eyes starting to redden. "I didn't think it would go this far. You live in an apartment I pay for, you use my card to dine with investors, and your scholarship came from a fund I co-founded," he cut her off. "All built on a pile of fiction." "But I love you," Haley choked out, reaching gently for his arm. "I just didn't know how to make you stay." Ethan pulled his arm away, not harshly, but firmly. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Haley. The only person who's been real in this entire story is your sister." She collapsed onto the chair, covering her face. The sobs started soft, like she was trying to hold on to some dignity, but they grew louder with every passing second. "You can't leave me over this. I'll change. I'll call her. I'll apologize." He opened the office door, voice steady but final. "I think it's best if you pack your things. The key's on the table." Haley froze. "Ethan, you can't do this. Not now." "You chose deception over trust," he said without looking back. "And no one builds a future on a foundation of lies." 30 minutes later, the concierge called a car for Haley. She left the building with a cream-colored suitcase, hair unbrushed, lips bare and trembling. All the glittering dreams she had of a luxury life shattered beneath her heels. Not because she lacked money, but because she lacked honesty. The next morning, a letter was sent to the board of the Lumen Foundation, a private scholarship trust Ethan had co-founded with 2 of his college peers. The subject line was stark and unembellished. "Withdrawal and termination request. Haley Miller's file." In the letter, Ethan laid out his reasons plainly. A lack of transparency in personal records, fabricated background, and unverifiable scholarship claims are the primary reasons for this decision. We will not continue supporting someone who treats trust as a tool to manipulate. The letter was simultaneously forwarded to 3 parties, one of them being the financial aid director at Haley's law school. Less than 48 hours later, Haley received a notice. Her scholarship was suspended and financial aid discontinued. She could continue her studies only if she paid tuition in full within 10 days, or her semester would be placed on hold. I didn't hear anything from Haley during those days, but I knew what was happening, not out of satisfaction, but out of relief that the truth had finally been named for what it was. No more people misled by tear-streaked photos. No more midnight calls demanding I apologize for things I hadn't done. I didn't wish for Haley to be crushed by all this. I just didn't want to keep paying for decisions that weren't mine. And if regaining a basic level of respect meant losing temporary peace, I was willing. Because some things, no matter how high the cost, should never be bought with silence. A week after Ethan officially cut all ties, Haley returned to the old house where my mother still lived. No one had to tell me, I already knew. That Monday morning, at a small diner on the edge of town, while I was installing new cooling pipes beneath the kitchen counter, a young waitress quietly brought me a glass of ice water and whispered, "Miss Sadie, I think your sister's working as a server at the restaurant I'm at. Looks just like you." I didn't respond, just nodded, tightened the last bolt, and headed back to my truck. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, but I recognized the handwriting in an instant. "Oh, sorry, I was wrong. I just wanted to be forgiven." No name, No explanations, just a few short lines, like a confession whispered in a storm. I stared at the screen for a minute, then locked my phone. I didn't delete the message, but I didn't reply either. I wasn't angry anymore, not even sad, but I couldn't go back to being the one who absorbed everyone's mistakes just to keep them upright. Forgiveness is one thing, returning to the same cycle is another. 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice came through the line, frail, like a final breath, trembling. Sadie, I need your help with something. I don't feel well. I think I should go to the hospital, but I don't have insurance. I listened in silence, holding the phone close, but feeling no stir inside. I didn't deny that my mother was aging, or that her health was declining. But that hoarse, hesitant tone, I had heard it too many times in too many familiar scenarios, and somehow my instincts told me something didn't add up. I need you to transfer me some money, she continued, just a few thousand from the account your father left. Mark it as a medical expense. They'll process it faster. I frowned. Where do you want it sent? She hesitated, then quietly said, to Haley's account. She'll go pay it for me. My head hurts too much to leave the house. I sat up straighter. You're using a medical excuse to pull funds from Dad's trust, so Haley can pay her tuition? The other end of the line went quiet, only the soft whir of a ceiling fan in the background. Don't do this, I said, gently but firmly. That trust wasn't meant to be abused, and you know that. Sadie, my mother sighed, dropping the pretense of weakness. She's lost everything. Ethan left, the scholarship's gone, and now she's washing dishes just to get by. It breaks my heart to watch. And did you ever feel that for me? I ask, voice steady. When I worked 2 jobs a day to support the house, when I couldn't afford a new coat, when I was excluded from every holiday because of my job. Did that ever break your heart? I just wanted her to have a better future, she replied. So did I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. And I gave up my youth to make that happen, but Mom, no one learns anything if there's always someone cleaning up after them. My apologies, my mother whispered, as if even her own voice would betray her. I stayed silent for a moment before replying softly, if Haley needs help, you can take her to the bank and ask about personal loans, or she can take time off school and work, learn to stand on her own, like I did. You don't need to fake an illness just to reclaim something that no longer belongs to you. Sadie, she said my name, voice trembling, as if she still couldn't believe how much I'd changed. I ended the call quietly, not in anger, not in blame, just because there comes a point when you must draw a line, not out of hatred, but because even love needs to be placed where it belongs. And I knew, if I kept tolerating this, they would never learn to stand on their own feet. Don't remember the last time I stepped across that threshold. Maybe it was Haley's 21st birthday. I'd brought a gift, a watch she once liked, but ended up left on the porch because, as Mom said, this party isn't suitable for help. It rained that day. Today it was sunny, but my heart felt cold. I parked by the curb and walked slowly up the weathered wooden steps. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open, the creak of the hinges oddly unfamiliar, yet painfully familiar. No one came to greet me. I walked straight into the living room, once warm 10 years ago, now cold and silent. Haley sat curled in the corner of the couch, hugging her knees, head bowed as if avoiding my gaze. Her once sleek hair was messy, her makeup replaced by visible fatigue. In front of her sat a cold cup of tea and a pile of crumpled tuition papers. She didn't look at me. My mother was at the dining table, yellow light from the ceiling lamp casting over the letter she was handwriting. A fountain pen lay beside her, cap off, ink smudging the edge of the paper. The first line I caught read, "Dear Sadie, I beg you not to abandon your own blood." She looked up when she heard my steps, eyes filled with confusion and faint hope, still believing I was here because I had softened. I said nothing. I simply placed a thick brown envelope on the table. Inside was the full account statement of the trust fund my father left, along with legal confirmation that I had transferred the entire amount to a newly established scholarship organization in his name, the Thomas Miller Fund for First Generation Scholars. My mother opened it, skimmed a few lines, then looked up, voice cracking. "What did you do? This was your father's money. For our family?" Hmm. Hem left it for those he believed would use it wisely, I replied calmly. And I don't think he'd want that money used to keep lies alive. Her eyes welled up, her lips moved to protest, but I held her gaze, unflinching. I was no longer the daughter standing in the kitchen doorway, waiting to be called to dinner, no longer the sister silently paying tuition while being excluded from every family conversation. I had long since stepped out of that shadow. Haley still said nothing. She didn't meet my eyes. No apology, no anger, just silence, as if she knew words now held no weight. I walked over and placed another paper beside her, a letter from the scholarship organization confirming that students from the Southwest in hardship would be prioritized starting next term, especially those like Haley and me once were, fatherless, unemployed mother, no safety net. "You can apply," I said in a measured tone. "You don't need my name. No one has to know we're related. As long as you're honest." She looked up slightly. Her eyes were red, her face exhausted, and there was no pride in her expression. Just someone young, realizing the wall she'd built was hollow and crumbling. My mother opened her mouth again, but I held up my hand. "I'm not turning my back on family," I said slowly, each word clear. "I'm just not funding deception." I turned and walked out of that house. Every step felt like shedding chains I had carried for years. No one called after me, no one followed, and they didn't need to. Some reunions aren't for reconciliation, they're for ending what should have ended long ago. A year passed. Nothing exploded, no dramatic turning point like in the movies. Everything shifted quietly, like spring creeping in after a long winter, steadily, without needing anyone's permission. My third garage just opened on the north edge of the city. When I signed the lease, I paused for a moment, not overwhelmed, just aware of how far I'd come. I was no longer a girl running errands, sleeping on a fold-up cot behind the shop. No longer someone scraping together dollars to pay someone else's tuition. I was a business owner with 37 employees, a personal accountant, and a feature in Forbes' local business spring edition under the headline, "From Mechanic to Mid-Texas Logistics Leader." I didn't make a big deal out of it, didn't post it online, just printed a copy, framed it in wood, and hung it in my office, at eye level, so I'd see it each day when I walked in. Months later, Ethan reached out with a proposal. No reference to the past, no flattery. He showed up at the garage with a draft project for renewable energy in New Mexico. His voice was still deep, but less guarded than before. He placed the documents on my desk and looked me in the eye, no longer keeping a distance. "We need someone who can bring tech to real people in real places. No one understands that better than you." I took it without a word. Later, I agreed, but on one condition. Part of the profits would go toward the local community. Ethan nodded without hesitation. As for Haley, I heard she dropped out after failing to cover her last semester's tuition. No more desperate pleas, no more emotional online posts. She got a job as an office assistant at a small real estate firm. The pay wasn't high, the tasks were repetitive, but it seemed stable. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. Not until one late autumn night when my phone buzzed softly as I checked my email. A message from the same number she'd always used. Just 10 simple words. "If one day you forgive me, I'll still be here." I stared at the screen. The light from the display shimmered on the red wine in my glass. I didn't feel anger, not sadness either. Just a quiet peace, like a healed scar under old skin. I didn't reply. I simply deleted the message, set the phone down, and looked out the window. The city glowed with lights. A breeze brushed against the porch. I leaned back in my chair, lifted the glass, took a sip. I'm not a cruel person. I just learned to save my kindness for the right people. And the strange thing is, Once I stopped trying to earn acceptance, I finally found the peace I'd been searching for all those years. Not in anyone else, but right here inside myself. Maybe all of us eventually will face that hard choice. Keep sacrificing silently for the sake of family, or finally protect our own worth, even if it means walking away. I chose the latter, not because I didn't love them, but because I couldn't keep loving in ways that destroyed me. What about you? If you were in this story, would you forgive? Or stay silent like I did? I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and share your perspective. It might help someone out there feel a little less alone. And if this story resonated with any part of your heart, don't forget to follow the channel. There are many more glimpses into family life. Some warm, some painful, waiting to be told with honesty and depth. We'll meet again in the next story.